I never thought I'd be making this video in a police station, watching my twin brother through one-way glass as detectives show him footage of me, the brother he thought he'd erased. 6 months ago, I vanished from Boston without a trace, leaving behind a life Tyler had been quietly dismantling for years. You'd think identical twins would share some bond deeper than DNA, but I learned the hard way that looking identical doesn't mean being the same person. I discovered Tyler had been systematically stealing my identity since college, credit cards, medical records, even dating my girlfriends when I was out of town. But his biggest con was yet to come. When I confronted him about the $50,000 missing from my accounts, I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. That night, I made a decision that saved my life. I disappeared before he could make me disappear permanently. What I didn't know was how far he'd go to become me, or how I'd use his own obsession to finally expose him. Growing up in suburban Massachusetts, Tyler and I were what people called mirror twins. While physically identical, we were opposites in almost every other way. I was methodical and patient. Tyler was impulsive and restless. Our father left when we were 8, leaving our mother, Elizabeth, a high school English teacher with a spine of steel, to raise us alone in our modest colonial home on Maple Street. Mom never played favorites, but she struggled with Tyler's unpredictability. "You boys may share the same face," she'd say, "but Daniel has his feet on the ground while Tyler's head is always in the clouds." That comparison followed us everywhere in our small town of Westboro. At Thanksgiving dinners with our extended family, Aunt Susan would inevitably corner me. "Thank God Elizabeth has you, Daniel, the responsible one, the reliable one." I'd smile politely while watching Tyler charm everyone else with stories that grew more elaborate each year. The summer before high school, I found my first real passion in photography. I saved up for months to buy a used Canon, documenting everything from the rusty railroad tracks behind our house to portraits of neighbors for extra cash. When I won a regional contest, my photo was displayed at the town hall. That night, Tyler didn't come to the ceremony. Instead, he borrowed my camera and took it to a party where it was stolen. Mom made him work all summer to replace it, but something changed between us after that. During senior year, I received a partial scholarship to Northeastern University. The night I got the acceptance letter, Mom made my favorite meal, her special New England clam chowder with fresh-baked sourdough. She gave me a professional camera wrapped in newspaper comics because we couldn't afford fancy paper. "This is your future, Danny," she whispered, tears in her eyes. Tyler, who'd barely graduated, erupted. "Of course, perfect Daniel gets another gold star." He flipped my bowl across the table, scalding chowder soaking my scholarship letter. "You've always been her favorite, always." He stormed out, returning hours later, drunk and apologetic. Mom forgave him immediately. She always did. But I remembered the look in his eyes when he'd ruined my acceptance letter. It wasn't just anger, it was calculation. I didn't know then that Tyler had been reading my journal, memorizing details of my life, studying me. When we turned 21, Mom used her teacher's pension to put a down payment on a food truck we'd talked about since childhood, Twin Tastes, featuring fusion New England cuisine. It was supposed to be our fresh start together, her retirement plan and our future. I still remember her face when she surprised us with the keys and business license at our birthday dinner on Boston Harbor. What Mom didn't know was that Tyler had been applying to colleges under my name, taking out loans with my Social Security number. The food truck was the first thing he sold when she died, unexpectedly, 3 years later. A stroke at just 52. I was devastated, but Tyler seemed more concerned with the inheritance. That's when the grand gesture happened. He suggested we use Mom's life insurance to start a photography business together. "It's what she would have wanted," he said, "for her boys to stick together."
I agreed, not knowing he'd already emptied half her account, or that he'd been slowly becoming me for years. The secret, the one I discovered only months before I disappeared, was far worse than stolen money. Tyler hadn't just been borrowing my identity, he'd been systematically replacing me. Last Thanksgiving marked 1 year since Mom's passing, and I suggested hosting dinner at my apartment in Cambridge. I wanted to honor her memory with her recipes and bring our scattered extended family together again. For weeks I prepared, fixing up the place, shopping for ingredients at Haymarket, even finding Mom's old tablecloth in storage. Tyler offered to handle the invitations and bring the wine, which should have been my first warning. 3 days before Thanksgiving, strange things started happening. My building manager mentioned approving my request to change locks, a request I never made. A client called to confirm a rescheduled photo shoot I knew nothing about. My neighbor Susan asked about my girlfriend who'd been staying over. I wasn't seeing anyone. Each incident seemed like a minor misunderstanding, but together they formed a pattern I couldn't ignore. The morning of Thanksgiving, I was chopping vegetables when Tyler arrived early. He looked identical to me as always. Same height, same brown hair cut the same way, same hazel eyes, but something was off.
He wore a sweater I could have sworn was mine, missing from my closet for weeks. Need help, bro? He grabbed a knife with unusual confidence for someone who rarely cooked. As we worked side by side, he casually mentioned details about my clients, my finances, even a conversation I'd had with my dentist. When I questioned how he knew these things, he shrugged. "You told me, don't you remember?" But I hadn't. Aunt Susan arrived first with her husband and teenage kids. She hugged Tyler before me, calling him Daniel. When I corrected her, she looked embarrassed. "Sorry, boys still confuse me sometimes." But Tyler had done nothing to identify himself. No, it's Tyler, actually. He'd simply accepted being called by my name. Uncle Mike brought his new wife, who I'd never met. When introduced to us, she said to Tyler, "Daniel, right? I recognize you from your website. Your photography is amazing." Tyler smiled and thanked her, discussing his recent corporate photo shoot with detailed knowledge of my work. I stood frozen, carving knife in hand, as my brother seamlessly performed as me. During dinner, my cousin asked about the food truck, a painful subject since Tyler had sold it without consulting me. Before I could answer, Tyler launched into a story about how we had decided to sell it to invest in our photography business. He described conversations with Mom that I'd had, not him. He recounted memories that belonged to me, speaking with such conviction that even I began questioning my recollection. As we ate Mom's traditional New England stuffing and cranberry sauce, I noticed Tyler had positioned himself at the head of the table, my table, pouring wine and playing host, while I increasingly felt like an observer in my own home. When he proposed a toast to Mom, who always believed in me, using her nickname for me, something snapped inside. I excused myself to the kitchen, hands shaking as I retrieved more cranberry sauce from the refrigerator. There, magnetized to the door, was a photo of Tyler with his arm around a woman I recognized. Jessica, my ex-girlfriend who'd broken up with me 6 months ago, claiming I'd changed too much. In the photo, Tyler wore my vintage Red Sox jacket, the one I couldn't find for weeks. Returning to the table, I saw a notification flash on my phone, a bank alert about a mortgage application in progress. I'd never applied for a mortgage. When I opened my banking app, I discovered several large transfers to an account I didn't recognize over the past months. The total? Nearly $50,000. As dessert was served, Mom's apple pie with Vermont cheddar, Tyler's phone rang. He stepped away to answer, and I heard him identify himself as Daniel Wilson to someone on the other end. When he returned, I asked loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Who was that, Tyler?" His response chilled me.
With perfect composure and a slight look of concern, he replied, "I'm Daniel. You're Tyler." Then, lowering his voice for only me to hear, he added, "You should take your medication before things get worse." My cousin whispered to her husband, loud enough for me to hear, "Is Tyler having another episode?" Another episode? There had never been a first one. That's when I noticed Aunt Susan's expression, not confusion, but pity. Uncle Mike avoided eye contact. My teenage cousins exchanged uncomfortable glances. Somehow, my family believed I was Tyler pretending to be Daniel, a narrative my brother had apparently been constructing for months, possibly years. The room began to spin as I realized the depth of Tyler's deception. It wasn't just about stealing money or my identity. He was systematically replacing me in my own life, gaslighting not just me, but everyone around us. And he had been methodically laying groundwork for what was coming next. As I opened my mouth to expose him, my doorbell rang. Tyler smiled. "That must be Dr. Kaplan," he said calmly. "I asked him to stop by. For your sake, Tyler, we're all worried about you." My hands trembled as I opened the door to find a gray-haired man with a leather briefcase. Not a Thanksgiving guest, but someone with the demeanor of a medical professional. He introduced himself as Dr. Robert Kaplan, extending his hand. "Tyler, we've met before, though you might not remember. Your brother thought it would help if I joined you today." "I'm Daniel," I insisted, my voice rising. "That's Tyler pretending to be me." Dr. Kaplan exchanged a look with my brother, a look of practiced clinical concern. Behind me, I could hear Tyler explaining to our relatives in hushed tones about my condition, words like delusional episodes and identity confusion floating into the hallway. Something primitive took over as I slammed the door and stormed back to the dining room. My entire family sat frozen around my mother's apple pie, their faces a mixture of alarm and pity. Tyler stood at the head of my table, in my apartment, wearing my expression of concern. "This ends now," I announced, pulling out my wallet and spilling its contents across the table. "Look at my driver's license, my credit cards. I'm Daniel Joseph Wilson, born September 4th, 1992, 6 minutes before Tyler Alexander Wilson." Aunt Susan reached for my hand. "Honey, we know who you think you are." "No!" I jerked away, pointing at Tyler. "He's been systematically stealing my identity for years. Check his wallet. Check it." To my shock, Tyler calmly removed his wallet and placed it beside mine. "Go ahead," he offered. When Uncle Mike opened it, every ID showed Tyler's face with my name. My stomach dropped as I realized how long this plan had been in motion. "He's changed his IDs," I argued desperately. "Call my office."
"Talk to my clients."
"We did," Aunt Susan said softly.
"When Daniel," she gestured to Tyler, "told us about your episodes getting worse." Dr. Kaplan stepped forward. "Tyler, your brother has documented your condition extensively. The identity confusion, the paranoia. He's been trying to protect you." "Protect me?" I laughed, a hollow sound that scared even me. "He stole $50,000 from my accounts. He's dating my ex-girlfriend. He sold Mom's food truck without my consent." My cousin whispered, "That's not how it happened," while her husband shook his head sadly. The room was closing in. My own family was gaslighted into believing I was the unstable twin. That's when I saw it. The slight curl at the corner of Tyler's mouth. Not concern. Triumph. Something clicked. I walked deliberately to my office, family members calling after me, and returned with my camera. "You want proof? Let me show you who's really who." I pulled up photos on my camera's display, hundreds of photographs I'd taken over the years, documented evidence of my career. Do any of you remember Tyler having a photography business before last year? Ever? Uncertainty flickered across faces as I scrolled through years of my work, images Tyler couldn't have taken.
"And this," I said, pulling up a folder marked Evidence that I'd been quietly compiling. Screenshots of unauthorized credit card applications in my name. Bank statements showing transfers I never made. My own medical records altered to include psychiatric visits that never happened. Tyler's composure finally cracked. "He's manipulating those images," he snapped. "You know he's good with computers." "Then explain this." I pulled out my most damning evidence, Mom's journal, which I'd found hidden among Tyler's things when helping him move last month. I flipped to her last entries, dated weeks before her stroke, and read her private concerns about Tyler's increasing obsession with my life, her worry that he was becoming dangerously envious of me. The room fell silent. Tyler lunged for the journal, but Uncle Mike caught his arm. "And this," I said, my voice breaking as I played a voicemail from my phone. Mom's voice filled the room. "Daniel, it's Mom. I'm worried about Tyler. He came by asking strange questions about your accounts, your clients. He's not himself. Call me back, sweetie." The timestamp, 2 days before she died. Tyler's face contorted with rage. "You think you're so perfect, so irreplaceable?" He grabbed a wine bottle, smashing it against the edge of the table. "You took everything from me, Mom's love, her respect. Everything was always for Daniel." As he advanced toward me with the jagged glass, Dr. Kaplan and Uncle Mike restrained him. In that moment of chaos, with Tyler finally showing his true self, I made a decision. I walked out, leaving behind everything, my apartment, my possessions, even my identity. Because I realized something terrifying. In a world where Tyler could so completely become me, the only way to save myself was to become no one at all. The last thing I heard was Aunt Susan's horrified whisper, "My God, he really is Tyler." The night I walked away from my life, I had nothing but my camera, laptop, Mom's journal, and $2,000 cash I'd hidden for emergencies. I drove west in my old Subaru, abandoning my phone after sending one email to a lawyer friend with copies of all my evidence. "If anything happens to me," I wrote, "you'll know who's responsible." I settled in a small town outside Denver, using cash to rent a room above a coffee shop from an elderly woman who didn't ask many questions. I cut and dyed my hair, grew a beard, and took day labor jobs that paid in cash. At night, I monitored Tyler's, or rather Daniel's, social media from library computers. He seamlessly stepped into my life, running my photography business, socializing with my friends, dating Jessica openly now. The perfect identity theft was complete. 3 weeks after I disappeared, Boston PD opened a missing persons case for Tyler Wilson after Daniel reported his troubled brother had vanished. I watched from afar as Tyler played the concerned twin, giving tearful interviews on local news, launching search campaigns. "I just want my brother to get the help he needs," he told reporters, standing in front of my apartment building. What Tyler didn't know was that I'd been meticulously documenting his fraud from the shadows. I created an encrypted online repository of evidence. Financial records showing the money he'd stolen, emails he'd sent pretending to be me, timestamps proving we couldn't have been in the same place simultaneously. Most importantly, I had video recordings of conversations with Mom where she'd expressed concerns about Tyler's behavior. 4 months into my self-imposed exile, I received an encrypted message from Detective Sarah Martinez of the Boston Financial Crimes Unit. My lawyer friend had quietly passed along my evidence. "We're building a case," she wrote, "but we need you to come forward." I hesitated. Coming forward meant facing Tyler, who had convinced everyone, even the police, that I was the unstable twin. If I returned without ironclad proof, I'd likely end up institutionalized or worse. The breakthrough came unexpectedly.
While working at a local photography festival under my new identity, I met Elise, a cybersecurity expert who'd left her own troubled past behind. When I finally trusted her enough to share my story, she didn't think I was crazy. Instead, she helped me dig deeper into Tyler's digital footprint. What we discovered was worse than I imagined.
Tyler had taken out multiple loans in my name, totaling over $200,000. He'd filed insurance claims on Mom's life using forged documents. Most disturbingly, we found evidence he'd been tampering with Mom's blood pressure medication in the weeks before her stroke. Small amounts, gradually increased. Not enough to kill immediately, but enough to cause the unexpected stroke that took her life. Elise helped me compile everything into an airtight case and securely transmit it to Detective Martinez. Within weeks, the investigation shifted from missing Tyler to fraudulent Daniel. The arrest happened during a high-profile photography gala in Boston, where Tyler was accepting an award for my work. As he stood at the podium delivering my acceptance speech, FBI agents and Boston PD surrounded the venue. Detective Martinez led the arrest personally, walking calmly to the stage as Tyler frantically tried to maintain his performance. "Daniel Wilson," she announced using the name he'd stolen, "you're under arrest for identity theft, fraud, embezzlement, and," she paused significantly, "the investigation into the death of Elizabeth Wilson is being reopened." Witnesses described how Tyler's charm transformed to rage in an instant. He screamed that they had the wrong twin, that he was the real Daniel, that his brother was the disturbed one. As they escorted him out in handcuffs, Jessica, my ex-girlfriend who'd been dating Tyler thinking he was me, collapsed in tears, finally understanding the strange changes she'd noticed in the man she thought was Daniel. I returned to Boston under police protection, my identity verified through FBI biometric confirmation and DNA testing. I watched through one-way glass as Detective Martinez interrogated Tyler. His composure had completely shattered. "You don't understand," he kept saying. "I am Daniel now.
I'm better at being Daniel than he ever was." The turning point came when Martinez played the video I'd recorded before disappearing, the one where I detailed every step of Tyler's escalating identity theft, including evidence about Mom's medication. As Tyler watched my face on screen, methodically dismantling his elaborate fraud, something remarkable happened. He began speaking to my image, forgetting about the detectives in the room. "You think you've won," he hissed at my recorded face. "You were always her favorite, the golden child. I deserve to be you more than you do." In his rage, he inadvertently confessed to everything. The aftermath has been a slow, painful reconstruction of my life. The courts restored my legal identity and finances. Tyler was sentenced to 15 years for the fraud and identity theft, with the investigation into Mom's death ongoing. Jessica came to apologize, explaining how Tyler had slowly convinced her I was changing, becoming more like him, until she believed she was still dating me when she began seeing him. The most unexpected development came from Aunt Susan. When I finally sat down with her after Tyler's conviction, she broke down crying. "There were signs," she admitted, "little inconsistencies. The way he spoke about your mother was different, but it seemed easier to believe his story than to face the alternative. I've sold my Cambridge apartment, too many painful memories, and opened a new studio in a converted warehouse near the harbor. The first exhibition featured photographs documenting my 6 months in hiding, titled Becoming No One. It's been called a haunting exploration of identity and erasure by the Boston Globe. Elise moved east to be with me, bringing her cybersecurity expertise to help others vulnerable to identity theft. Together, we've started a nonprofit foundation helping victims rebuild their lives after similar crimes.
The food truck, Mom's dream for us, couldn't be recovered. but I used part of the insurance settlement to create a scholarship in her name at the culinary school where she always wanted to study. The unexpected twist came during the reading of Mom's will, which had been suppressed by Tyler. A safe deposit box contained a second journal, one she'd kept hidden from both of us, detailing her growing awareness of Tyler's behavior. "I love both my sons," she wrote in her final entry, "but I fear what Tyler might become if his obsession with Daniel continues. I've made arrangements should anything happen to me. Daniel will know what to do." Attached was a key to a storage unit containing backup copies of all our important documents, family photos, and a letter addressed to me that read simply, "Trust yourself, Daniel. You always see the truth, even when others don't." It's been 18 months since Tyler's sentencing, and I'm still piecing together the fragments of a life he nearly erased. The man who stares back at me in the mirror is both familiar and changed. My face, but with eyes that have seen the darkest side of family bonds. Some nights I still wake up wondering if I'm truly myself, or if parts of Tyler have somehow seeped into who I've become. The hardest truth wasn't that my twin tried to steal my identity. It was recognizing that identity itself is fragile, constructed partly from how others see us. When everyone believed I was someone else, I almost lost myself. But in disappearing, I paradoxically found something stronger than the identity Tyler coveted. I found resilience. For anyone watching who feels unseen or replaced in their own story, reclaim your narrative. Document your truth. Trust the voice inside that recognizes when something isn't right, even when the world tells you otherwise. Your identity belongs to you alone.
If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to this channel where I share insights on rebuilding after betrayal and protecting your digital identity. Like this video to help others find it, and leave a comment about your own experiences with family dynamics or identity. Remember, even identical faces can hide profoundly different souls. Stay vigilant, stay authentic, and thank you for witnessing my story.